It's 9 a.m. Welcome to the 2017 FileMaker Developer Conference. I'm glad that you have chosen to start your day here. My name is Doug Gardner, and before I get started, let me ask you a few things. Who here is new to DevCon? Put up your hand. All right, that's amazing. A little chill went down my spine when I saw that. That's very exciting. How many people are really new to FileMaker? All right. How many people have played around inside FileMaker, even though you're new? I want to see your hands right now. Okay. Now, how many people have played around in the relationship graph? And I've actually created a relationship in FileMaker and are, okay, a little more than half. We're going to go through constructing relationships in FileMaker and start with some very basic things that I hope everybody here has at least an idea of. I hope that not 100% of this is new to you. If it is, that's okay, because it's been planned. I've put this together in such a way that even if it's all new, that's fine. But if there are things here that you already know good, I think that will give you pieces that you can grab onto. There will be touchstones in here. Let's get started. I'm just going to tell you really quickly a couple of things about me, and then we're going to get going because we've got a lot of ground to cover. I've only got an hour for this session. My name's Doug Gardner. My company is Exoteric. We're a Toronto-based FileMaker consultancy, a platinum partner of FileMakers. We've got clients across Canada and the United States, and we've been developing FileMaker databases for over 20 years. I think that one of the important things that I like to say at the beginning of each session is that the approach is Socratic. We can't have a Socratic dialogue in which we talk to each other and go back and forth because there are just too many people in the room. But the idea is not that I'm standing up here imparting knowledge to you. The idea really is that I'm presenting you with ideas about which you're welcome to be critical. And if you've got questions about what I'm doing, or if you disagree with something that I'm saying, let me know. Either put your hand up, and if it's appropriate, I will come to you and you can ask your question, or you can mount your argument. But if it's not appropriate at the time, then I'll just ask you to wait for a minute, and I'll try to come to you at appropriate time in the talk. All right. Let's get started with what I like to call the absolute basics. We're going to run through, starting with some real basics, and move through different elements of the relationship graph and understanding relationships in FileMaker. And if there's time, I've got my catch-all relationship grab bag at the end where I'm just going to show you a few cool things really quickly. But there's a very decent chance that we won't get there with questions, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to just jump right in with the black screen. I'm going to jump right in with a database that, let me try to make it a little bit bigger. See how well that fits. Nah, it's too big. Okay. I'll keep it at this size. And the very first thing that I'm going to do is tell you a couple of things about this database, and then I'm going to show you a very simple relationship. So this database that we're looking at, in order to explore the database and understand it, if we go to the File menu here, we go to Manage, Database, we're able to see all the tables in our database, the fields within those tables. So here are the tables represented, and we can flip through and we can see the fields in those tables. And then we can see the relationships between these tables. In this particular case, let's just look at the tables before we look at the relationships. We've got a company table. Inside of our company, we have contacts. That makes a lot of sense. Those are the employees that work at the company. We're calling them contacts. And then we have quotes, And so a company can have a quote created for it. And we have products. The products are the items that we're going to attach to the quote. Well, let's go take a look at our relationship graph right now. As it stands, all we have on the relationship graph are these things that look very much like they are representations of the tables that we saw over here. Company, contact, quote, product, company, contact, quote, and product. There's a big difference, though, between our list of tables and the things that are on the relationship graph. These are not tables on the relationship graph. These are representations of tables. So, for instance, I can take the company table and click on it, and I'm just going to press Command-D to duplicate. Now we've got that company table represented twice on this graph. It's also possible for me to just go like this and delete everything off of our relationship graph. It's going to say, you sure you want to do that? But we have not deleted any of the tables in our database. So the relationship graph just provides us with pointers back to those tables. That's the first thing to wrap your head around. It's pretty straightforward, but it takes a while to really understand the implications of this. I'm going to cancel what I just did, and I'm going to bring that back up again. My general practice is show how to do it the first time, and then after that I might start using the keyboard shortcuts just to speed it up so that I can open things up quickly and close them down quickly again. But the bottom line is to get in, you go to File, you go to Manage, Manage Database, and when you select that, it opens the window that's got the tables, fields, relationships. Okay. What I'm going to do is start by just creating a very simple relationship. I'm going to come back and I'm going to explain more detail about this in a minute. But here's what we can do. We can come in and say, take this company. It's got something called a company number here. I'm going to talk about what that is in a minute, but what that field represents. These are all the fields in the company table that are represented here. I'm going to take that first company number field, and I'm going to go over here to the contacts table, and I'm going to drop, and I'm going to let go, and now I've just created something called an equijoin. That means that when the company number on the company side of the database equals the company number that's on the contact side of the database, display those results, or give me those results. Let's talk a little bit about why we chose the company number field over here and the company number field over here, what these fields mean, and how to think about creating our connections between tables in the database. If we go in to the fields area in our database, so here's our list of fields. This is where we define the fields for the database. We come in here. Notice that the very first field I've got in this database is called company number. What we need to do is come up with a way of creating a unique identifier for a company. So imagine we've got 10 companies in our database, or we've got 100,000 companies in our database. We need a way to be able to pinpoint one and only one company. And a good way to do that might seem like, well, we could use the company name field. That's usually pretty unique. But it can't be usually pretty unique. It's got to be absolutely all the time 100% unique. So we need to create something that we call a primary key within that table. And the primary key is the unique identifier for the company record. Well, how do we do that? How do we get a unique identifier, something that's always unique? It can't be the phone number. I've seen databases built where the phone number is used as the primary way of uniquely identifying a record in the database. That's no good because phone numbers change. What we do is, if we double click on this field, it opens up a window. These are the field options, and you can do this on any field. And in this particular case, we've set this field to auto-generate a serial number. That means each time a record is created, each time we add a new company to this table, it will get its own unique identifier. It will get the next serial number in the sequence. And it's showing us here that the next one's going to be 10,206. And the next one after that will be 10,207. It just keeps counting like that. This value is what's called a primary key because it is unique amongst all of the tables in the database. No two records share that same primary key. This uniquely identifies, in this case, the company. FileMaker's got another way of creating unique identifiers, which is a little more advanced, but I'm going to just mention it because even though you are mostly new to FileMaker, it doesn't necessarily mean you're new to computing and the world of programming. So we could also auto-enter a value that's called a universally unique identifier. And to do that, we use a function in FileMaker called getUUID. And FileMaker will give us a 16-byte, 128-bit random 36-character key that we can use as our key field that will uniquely identify a record in the database. So we've got two options, two ways of doing it. For now, we're just going to use serial numbers to uniquely identify. These are our primary keys. So let's just... So we need a way of uniquely identifying. A primary key is the key that identifies a particular record in a table. We need, in each of our tables, to have something that's defined as the primary key. So just a field that's defined as a primary key. It's got to be unique. It can't be empty. It can't change under any circumstances. So names, phone numbers, dates, not good primary keys. Serial numbers and randomly generated numbers are good primary keys. Let me just go back for a second, show you something. We said that we want it to be unchanging. Well, FileMaker allows us, when we're defining the value, or when we're defining the field, to put a check in this checkbox here: prohibit modification of value during entry. So we want to make sure that that's selected for our primary key. Now, in addition to there being primary keys in the database, oh, by the way, so if I go into the contact area, in the contact table, see that there's our primary key for contacts. And the convention that I'm using here is just naming the primary key after the table itself. So I always know, if I'm looking at the quote table and I'm looking at the quote number, that's my primary key. Now, in addition to having primary keys, we can also have something that are called foreign keys. Notice here's my contact number. I'm in the contact table. Well, that's my primary key. Well, I've got something here called company number. That's known as a foreign key. I would take the company number of a company that I want to associate with a particular contact and put that company number into that foreign key so that when I'm on the relationship graph and I say the company number in the company table matches a company number that's in the contact table, these two things are connected. These two things are linked. Any questions about this? Good. I think it's pretty clear. This is the absolute fundamentals, and we're going to get moving a little bit more quickly. Now, we've created a relationship here between these two table occurrences on our relationship graph. Well, if we want to display the results of that, what we can do is we can go into layout mode. I should have showed you that instead of using the key command. We can go into layout mode, which is where we construct the interface for our database. And we've got something up here called a portal tool. And it graphically looks a little bit like what we're going to draw with it. Portal tool gives us a view into related data. So right now, we're in the company area. We want to be able to see those related contacts that we've just shown. So here we go. I'm going to now connect this portal to a contact table occurrence. And I'm going to say OK. And then FileMaker is going to ask me, well, what fields do you want to display? I'm going to show my first name, my last name, and my cell phone. So I'm going to display that data. Oh, one other thing that I should have shown. In fact, I'm going to start again. Just do this one more time. I'm going to draw it out. It's already connected to contacts. Good, perfect. I'm going to put my company number in. Then I'm going to show my first name, my last name, and my cell phone number. So this is what I'm going to show in the portal. So now what we can see here is that we're on a company called Exoteric Inc., named after my company, and the company number is 10,003. Well, notice over here in the contact area where we're showing company numbers, and I probably should have created a field label for that. We're showing company numbers. All the companies that are being displayed here are 10,003. So this matches this, and therefore we're able to see our results. If I go to a different record in the database, like this record, well, now that's company 10,001, and notice that all the contacts, sure enough, are 10,001. So we've created a simple relationship, simple equi-join between these two sides. By the way, this is all a little bit like a cooking show. I already had the data in here that had the company numbers populated, et cetera, so that I could show this to you. How did I get it to show up? To do that, I went in here and I clicked on this tool that if you hover over them and you're patient, it will show you what the name of the tool is. So this is the portal tool. And I dragged out and I created a portal, which is a view through a relationship. So right now we're in the company area and we're viewing through into the contact area. OK. I'm going to explain a couple of other things on the relationship graph. I'm just going to jump back there really quickly. And I'm going to show you that we can open up the relationship and view its construction by just double-clicking right here in the center. And a window opens. It's called Edit Relationship. And this allows us to change the things that are related inside of the in both tables and put our relationship together in whatever way we want. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave it with what we've got. Notice here that there's a left side where it says the table is company, and these are all company fields. And there's a right side, this is contact, and these are the contact fields. That's entirely arbitrary. In fact, watch this. If I just switch these like this, and now I open it up, now contacts is on the left side, and companies is on the right side. The right and the left don't have any particular meaning in this. And that is not to say, though, that it's entirely valueless. I'm going to come to that in a couple of minutes. Let me show you a couple other things. We can also create records through the relationship. So right now, remember we've got our companies and they're connected to contacts. Well, on the contact side, if I put a check in this checkbox that says allow creation of records in this table via this relationship, that means FileMaker is going to give me a way to create records on the contact side. What does it need to do that? So let's just take a look at that. So when I do that, you can see down here, FileMaker's added an extra row for me that's got nothing in it. It's waiting to accept data. And if I go in here and type a name in, notice what it did? It filled in the key value for me. So FileMaker's fulfilling the requirements of the relationship just by putting a check in that checkbox. So whenever I create a new record in this portal, not anywhere in the table, but using this portal, it's going to fulfill the requirements of the relationship. Another thing that we can do is right here is we can also delete related records in this table. So the way that this would work, if I put a check in here, if I delete the company record, the parent record, then all those related contacts are going to get deleted at the same time. You might want that. You might not want that. That's kind of a risky thing. But it's good to know how that works and play around with it and decide. Sometimes if you do something like delete a contact, having those, or delete a company, having those contact records around is a good thing because it can help you to piece things back together. Other times you want to keep your data side totally clean, so you want those things to get wiped out. It's really a decision you have to make. And then the final thing that we see over here is sorting records. And we can actually sort our records based on the relationship. So I'm going to create a sort based on first name, and I'm going to close this, and we're going to take a look at it. So you can see now, I've got a more dramatic example. Maybe I don't. Okay, I don't. But anyway, you can see that they're all sorting now by the first name, Billy, Bob, and Bob. Let's make Bob Zach. Super dramatic. Zach's now down at the bottom. So it's sorting by the first name. It's sorting through the relationship. Well, when we do this, that means every time FileMaker is going to display data through the relationship, it has to sort the records. So this can become expensive. This can require resources from your server across your network. All the data is moving back and forth. It's getting sorted every single time. That has costs. So you might not want to have that turned on and be sorting every single time. Oh, by the way, let me just drive the point home. Every time I flip to a new company, it's sorting every time I do this in order to display that data. But it's not just sorting it here, it's sorting it any place that I put this portal and we're displaying through that relationship. There's another way that we can do that, same thing. I'm going to turn off the sorting in here. And so we can see that we're not sorted right now. I'm going to go into layout mode again, double click on our double click on the portal, and the portal setup window opens up. Notice one of the options that we've got here is to sort the portal. And I'm going to sort the portal by first name. Let me just make this a bit smaller. There we go. So I'm going to sort the portal by first name. Now I'm getting exactly the same result as when I was sorting the relationship. But what's the difference? Well, the difference is that when we are displaying data through that relationship, we are no longer necessarily sorting the records every time. We're only sorting the records when we come to this particular layout and look at this particular portal. But we could just as easily have another representation of this portal like this, that's not sorted, like this, and that could be on a different layout. FileMaker does not have to sort to show that second instance of the relationship. Yes? He said, wouldn't you have the same functionality what if you used the relationship sparingly? Yep. You could have a sorted relationship and an unsorted relationship. But again, you're spreading that cost of sorting the relationship across your database, so when you are displaying, and you're also complicating your relationship graph. And as you're going to see in a minute, relationship graphs get complicated really fast on their own without adding that kind of burden. Okay. Well, I'm going to show you something here. So we're viewing a company and the related contacts. But suppose that I go, let's just look at the relationship graph again. So this is the relationship we're looking at right here. So suppose I now go into the contacts table I'm going to view them like this. And I'm going to show you something really interesting here. I'm going to add a field to the layout with my field tool. And I'm going to say, show me the related company. Our relationships work in both directions. So if we've got a relationship between company and contact, we've got a relationship between contact and company. So now I can display the company name of the company that's related to this contact. Let me just do that. So there you go. We can see the company name, and if we actually scroll through some of these contacts, we can see the company name change along with the company number that's up at the top. The relationship works in both ways, but both sides in the relationship are not equal. This is a very interesting point. I'm going to explain what I mean. It's very helpful in FileMaker to think of the left side of the relationship as being, or as one side of the relationship, I should say, as being the search criteria. So in this case, our search criteria is the company number 10,001. The other side of the relationship are the results of performing that find or performing that search. So over here, we've got the results of that search. Here's why it's very useful to think about it in this way. Because of how FileMaker works inside. In FileMaker, if you perform a find on a field, FileMaker is able to display the results often very, very quickly, even if you have millions of records. And the reason is because FileMaker constructs something called an index. Let me just explain to you what an index is and how it's useful when you're performing a find. Imagine that imagine you had Bertrand Russell's History of Western Philosophy, about a 12 to maybe 1,400 page, thick, small print book, and you wanted to find all the instances in that book where Plato's mentioned. Well, there are two ways that you could do that. One way is you start on page 1, and you start reading, and you write down on a piece of paper every time you come to a reference to Plato, you write down the page number. And then a few weeks later, you'll have a list of all the places where Plato's mentioned in the book. There's a way faster way, and that is, of course, to flip to the back of the book and look at the alphabetically ordered index, find the word Plato, and there you'll have all the page numbers on which Plato is mentioned. So FileMaker does the same sort of thing when it's performing a find. If it's able to, FileMaker creates an index. The index is only in your current table. You can't share indexes from other tables. But in your current table, it creates the equivalent of the back of the book. And in cases where FileMaker can create an index, you are able to create a relationship between the find side and the results side in our tables. So let me show you what I'm saying here. I'm going to go into Manage Database. I'm going to go into the Fields area. I'm going to switch from the company table into the contact table. So I'm looking at the fields in the contact table. Here's my company number, the company number that I'm using as a foreign key to relate to the company. And notice here that it says that it's indexed. I'm going to double click to open up the window that gives me control over the field options window. I'm going to go into the storage area right here. And now you can see here's where the index is set up. And right now, the index is turned on. FileMaker actually has two types of indexes, a value index and a word index. Value indexes are used for relationships. There are single values in fields that are used for relationships. but you can also have a text field that has a whole bunch of words in it, like a notes field where you're just typing any old thing. Well, you can still perform a find on your notes field fairly quickly because FileMaker will also create another type of index called a word index. I'm going to turn the index off in the company number field in this contacts table. And I'm going to turn off this thing here that says automatically create indexes as needed. By the way, that's FileMaker's default. So FileMaker starts with all the indexes turned off. But then if you perform a find on a field or you try to create a relationship, FileMaker will just turn the index on for you and you don't even have to think about it. So most people don't really think about it that much, but it's important to know if you really want to understand how relationships work. So I'm going to turn off the index and look at what happens. It's no longer displaying our related contacts. And the reason is because of an engineering decision made on the part of FileMaker Inc. It's very costly to read through every single page in the book to see if you've got a match for something that you're looking for. When the index is turned off, FileMaker has to go to every single record in your table that could have 1,000, 10,000, 1,000,000, 10 million records in it. It has to go to every single one of those records and say, is there a match here? 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 That's so slow that FileMaker doesn't allow you to create relationships with fields that do not have indexes in them. So it just shows you blank, nothing. So I'm going to go back in, going to turn the relationship back on, or rather turn the index back on. I'm just going to say automatically create indexes as needed. Is an index needed right now? Yes, because on the relationship graph, we hook these two things up. FileMaker needs the index to make that work. And so there it is. Everything comes back again. Now, that's the result side of the relationship. Those you have to have, your relationship has to involve an index on the find side, on the result side of the relationship, on the result side of the relationship. But on the find side of the relationship, over here, it doesn't matter if this is indexed at all. In fact, this could be what's known as a global value, which has no index at all. It's one single value that applies to all of the records in the table. Let me just open this up here. So I'm going to turn off my indexing for FileMaker. I did not make it a global value. I probably shouldn't have mentioned that. Global storage is if you put a check in this checkbox, it means that one single value is going to be in this field for every single record in your database. All the records are going to share that one same value that you've created. That could be used as the find side of a relationship as well. But instead, I'm just going to turn off my index completely and just show you that our relationship still works. It's no longer two-way, though. We can't go back into the contact table and view this company any longer because it doesn't know how to find that company any longer. But the helpful thing is to see that this is the find side, and on the other side of that is the result side. And it's just like performing a find in FileMaker. Any questions? Yeah? Pardon? I will just say that for the most part, especially if you're newer to the FileMaker world, just allow FileMaker to index as necessary. When you start to build really sophisticated databases where you're concerned about the size of the files and the amount of data that's moving back and forth, these indexes can get big. And you can be moving a lot of data back and forth. And you might selectively want to turn indexing off for certain fields, not allow them to have indexes. There are also other reasons to not have indexes, like you want to force FileMaker to look at every record in performing a find or in showing the results of a calculation. So there can be reasons why you want to turn the indexes off. We don't have time to get into it in great detail now, but if you've got more questions about that, then just come and ask me afterwards. I'd love to talk to you about it. Okay, so let's just get in here and really quickly, we're going to create the main relationships. We're going to complete all the main relationships in our database here. So our company can have multiple quotes. We're going to take our key value from company, and we've got a company foreign key in quotes so that we can connect our companies to quotes. One company can have many quotes. One company can have many contacts. One quote can have many products. So we're going to take our quote number from here, and we're going to attach it to our product table over here. And now we're going to show you some different things that you can do, different types of relationships that we've got. Before I do that, I just want to mention that there are tools on the relationship graph down here at the bottom. This one is for just creating a new table occurrence like that. We can name them whatever we want. There's another way of creating a new table occurrence. You can just select an existing table occurrence, and you can press on the double pluses down here at the bottom, and that just duplicates. You can press Command D and duplicate. You can hold down Option and drag. So there are a number of different ways to just duplicate an existing table occurrence, and that can often be a good shortcut to getting table occurrences on your relationship graph. I'm going to delete those. Also down here at the bottom, we are allowed to, we can actually click up here and then click Edit Selected Object down here at the bottom, but we don't really need to do that because you can just double click on the object itself, on the table occurrence itself to open it up. We have things down here for arranging. So once your graph starts to grow and it starts getting messy, it's nice to keep things in nice columns and rows, and we can do all that by aligning our edges vertically and horizontally, as well as distributing the space between our table occurrences and getting them all to be the same size, because we can drag them around and make them different sizes and things as well. So we can there are group management tools down at the bottom. Just play around with them. There's also a way to zoom in and to zoom out. And if you, oops, you have to deselect that tool afterwards. You can also do things like select a single table occurrence, and if you wanted to find, well, I'm going to make a duplicate of that one. And if I wanted to find all of the tables that underlie, or all of the, or the table that's shared by multiple table occurrences, I can click on one table occurrence like this, and then I can go into my highlighting down here at the bottom, and I can say select tables with same source table. And it's going to just highlight them for me and show me, oh, these are both related to that company's table that I had. Just things to help you manage, help you to get along. Another thing that you can do is you can click on a table occurrence. If your graph gets really messy, hopefully you never need this and your graph never gets this messy. I'm going to show you how to try to avoid that in a minute. But you can also say select related tables one jump away, just one relationship hop away. And FileMaker will highlight those for you. We can also control our pages and be printing and show or hide where the pages would be if we printed the graph. I don't think you need to print your relationship graph too often unless you're doing it for documentation purposes. Okay, let me show you a few different kinds of joins now. In this database, we've got something here called the quote history, where we would like to be able to show the other quotes for this, for the company that we are looking at right here. Well, I'm going to go in. We've already created a relationship between company and quote. I'm not going to use that relationship, though, because I'm going to show you something a little bit more interesting, a little more sophisticated. I'm going to duplicate this table occurrence, and I'm going to call it quote history. And I'm going to say, all right, so show me all the quotes for this company when the company number, matches the company, just like we did up above. And let me just move this over so it's a little easier to see. Okay. And all right, so I'm going to go in. Now I'm going to hook up my portal. I have to tell my portal, what table occurrence do I want to be pointing at? Well, I want to be pointing at the one I just created called quote history. And now I'm going to be showing the date of the quote. I'm going to show, let me bring this down here. Sorry. I'm going to show the quote number, and I'm going to show the salesperson. Okay. So there we go. We can see this is showing us the all of the quotes that are related to this particular company. But what I really want to do is I want to be able to use this start and end date as filters to just show me quotes over a certain period of time. Well, I can do that by creating a little bit different join. The one that we've got here, remember, is called an echo join. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add to that. So currently this is called a single predicate join. The predicate are the terms of the relationship. Well, I'm going to show you how to create a multi-predicate join where we can have multiple terms in our relationship so that we can filter a set of data. So I'm going to say where my quote date is greater than or equal to my history start date, show me those records, and where it is less than or equal to my history end date, show me those records. So we're bracketing. We're saying from this date to that date. Show us just those quotes. Let's just take a look at that. So now we can see it started filtering already that if I change my date here, it's going to change the number of quotes that are showing up in my portal. So by creating a multi-predicate join and by using greater than and less than, we can construct filters on our data. I'm going to show you something else interesting that we can do. I'm going to suppose we want to be able to see the other quotes that we've got. We went back into the quote area, and we're a salesperson, we're working on this quote, we're trying to put it together. It'd be so helpful if we knew, have I been quoting this company a lot? Are they just asking for quotes and never buying anything? I'd like to be able to see the other quotes that I've got for this customer. Well, I'm going to go into my relationship graph. I'm going to duplicate my quote table occurrence, and I'm going to relate the quote to itself. This is called a self-join. I'm going to call this quote to quote based on the company number. And so all I'm doing is, you can see that our source table is the same here, right? It's quote, and I'm going to say, when the company number matches, show me the list of quotes that go along with it. So here we go. Now I'm going to just set up my portal. Quote to quote based on company number. Say OK. There's a quote. There's a salesperson. And our quote date. OK, so now we're seeing other quotes for this company. But are we? Yes?
So you've already had a relationship between the quote table and the company. Why did you need to make another?
I'm showing you Just watch this. This is actually a really cool trick. So if we take a look here, so our quote number here is quote 10,001. I've labeled this other quotes for this customer, but the very first quote I'm showing is quote 10,001. How can we solve this? We don't want to show the quote that we're currently on in our list of quotes. Well, when I go back into the relationship graph and I open up my relationship to edit it, I'm going to add a new predicate. And I'm going to say, show me all of the quotes for this company where the company numbers match, but exclude cases where the quote number, so the quote number I'm currently on, is equal to the quote number in that other table occurrence. So that's our equijoin. That's not equal to. So now we're saying if the company numbers match and the quote numbers do not match, show me just those results. So we're creating an exclude through our relationship. And sure enough, there's quote number 10,001, but it's no longer represented. These are truly only the other quotes for this one customer. Yes? Could you have done the same thing using filters? Yes, it's a little more complicated. Okay, the answer is yes. Okay, I'm going to show you another really cool one. Yeah? Yes, yes, you can absolutely do that. I'm going to show you something along those lines. Kind of in a rush now, though, so I got to hurry. Okay, so suppose we want to start adding products to our quote. Well, how can we do that? Well, it would be so nice if we had a list of all the products in our database that we could just look at and choose products from. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here to the product table occurrence. I'm going to duplicate that. And I'm going to create something called a Cartesian join. A Cartesian join means that regardless of what's on the two sides of my relationship, they always match. Everything on this side matches everything on that side, and everything on that side matches anything on that side. I think you know what I just tried to say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take things that we know don't match. I'm going to take the customer name and the product number, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to define this using that little X, which is the Cartesian join. I'm going to say change. Okay, and now I'm going to be able to go in and hook up and show my all of the products in my database. So it doesn't matter what's on either side of the join, it shows everything, and it shows everything even if there's no values in your fields. It shows everything. You can't get away from it showing you everything. Okay. So now what we can do is we can start adding products to our quote lines. We can do that by selecting a quote number up here, coming down here, and notice in the product table, we created a spot for a foreign key for a quote number. So I'm just going to paste my quote number in and see what happens. Now that axle clip is showing up in my quote lines. And now the battery tray with screws, we'll make that show up, and we'll make the LED light show up as well. Now, we've done that. We're displaying these line items, quote line items here, through this relationship on our graph. Remember at the beginning we created quotes and we connected it to products based on that quote number. Well, this creates a real problem that is known in database circles as the many-to-many problem. Think about the types of relationships you can have. You can have a one-to-one relationship. One person has one social insurance number. or social security number, you call it up here or down here. You could have a one-to-many relationship, like one person has many shirts. You got to hope. You can have many-to-many relationships, though, like one actor is in many movies, and one movie can have many actors. Or in our case, one quote can have many products, but one product could be on many quotes. Let me show you what the problem is with the way we've set this up. Currently, we're on quote 10,001, and we've attached that quote number to our products table so that we could show our lines up over here and our quote lines. Now let's move to the next record in the database, quote 10,002. Now let's suppose we want to grab that quote number. I'm just going to copy it, Command-C, copy. And now I want to go and I want to add the LED light. Womp womp. I can't do it because that's already been used. How do we make it so that we can have one product on many quotes, just as we can have one quote with many products? Well, in order to solve that problem, we create a new table in the database called a join table. So let's just do that. I'm going to go into my table area, and I'm going to create a table that I'm going to call quote lines. And when I go in to define the fields in that table, I only really need two fields. I need a field for the quote number. I'll make it a number field. And I need a field for the product number. Now when we create a record, think about what we can do. We can take any quote number and put it into that record, and we can take any product number and put it into the same record. And now we've created a relationship from the quotes to the quote lines to the products. I'm going to show you that. So here's our quote line table. Here's the relationship we've got right now, the dysfunctional, dangerous, toxic relationship between quotes and products. Let's get rid of that like that. And instead, let's put our new quote line table in the middle. And we're going to say, OK, we've got an equijoin between here and here, and an equijoin between here and here. And we're going to say, allow us to create new quote lines through the relationship, like that. And this is going to allow us to now have one quote with multiple products and one product beyond multiple quotes. Let's just take a look. So we have to point this at our new relationship. It's called quote line. And now we just have to point our fields at, well, there's our product number right there. And guess what? I'm going to explain this in a minute, but we don't have to aim our description fields and our price fields because they're going to look right through that relationship to the other table occurrence. They're going to look, we're sitting right here. We're on a layout that's based on the quote. We're looking through to these quote lines, and from there we can see straight through to the products table. So we can display fields from this products table all the way through here to the quote table. Whoops, don't do that. OK. So here we go. So what I'm going to do is, now I'm going to take my product number from over here, and I'm going to put my product number. So there's my axle clip. There's my battery tray with screws, my LED light. And I've put those all onto my quote line items table. Now I'm going to move to the next quote. And if I want to take that same LED light, there it is. Because what's getting duplicated is that line item table. And it's just holding two values, the quote and the product that we're relating it to. Questions? OK, good. That's one of the most fundamental problems in relational design solved. So suppose that we're hard workers and we decided that we were going to clean this up a little bit. Well, the first thing we could do is, here's like a cooking show. I can now just create a little script and make it so that I can click on buttons to add items from my products table over into my quote lines table. Boom, boom, boom. Put together my quote really quickly like this. Well, we can make this even better by arriving at a fully built out relational database that looks like this. Now, I only have 5 minutes, but I want to tell you I want to share with you one very important thing about understanding how FileMaker's relationship graph works and the important role that layouts play in FileMaker. So I'm going to show you something in this fully built out database. One of the things that we can do is we can click a button and we can create a new line item in a related table. So this is just creating a new line in our quotes table. I'm just going to show you the script for doing that. The first thing we do in this script is we grab the quote number in something called a variable. A variable is like a container that we just create on the fly to hold something. We're going to be holding the quote number in that variable. Then we're going to go to a different layout in the database. And we're going to create a record. And we're going to set the value in a field that is connected to that table based on that quote number that we grabbed originally. And so to do that, here's our calculation window. And we can see up at the top here, it says, this calculation will be evaluated based on context determined at runtime. What the heck does that mean? What is context? What is runtime? These are two questions I'm going to answer very, very quickly. I'm going to show you something about FileMaker that is of such fundamental importance it cannot be overstated. Your relationship graph, let's look at the relationship graph for this particular project. Your relationship graph that has all these table occurrences on it underlies the rest of the logical structure of your database. I've got a slide that I'm going to show you. I've purposely skipped through a bunch of slides because I was not in good shape. But here's FileMaker's basic organizational structure. You've got your file. Within a file, you've got tables. Within tables, you've got fields. We all know that. Here's another way of looking at it. You've got your file. Within your file, you've got tables. Within the tables, you've got table occurrences that are on the relationship graph that I just showed you. And then sitting on top of those table occurrences, relying on those table occurrences, are our layouts and our scripts and our calculations. The reason that this is important for you to understand is because one of the things that you can do in a script in FileMaker is use a script step that's called go to layout. Go to layout takes you from one layout to another layout. As you're going from one layout to another layout, you are traversing FileMaker's relationship graph. So don't think of it just based on what's on the screen. Think of it like this. I'm opening up a file here, a FileMaker file, that we can see has got 8,000 records in it. And let's take a look at those records. Well, we can't see them. It's showing us 0 records right now. Why is that? Well, to investigate, let's look at the layout that we're on. Go in, look at our layout setup. Show records from unknown. This layout that we're sitting on right now is not connected to anything on the relationship graph. That means this layout can't help us in any way. But if we go into our relationship graph and we create a table occurrence for it, and we go back to our layout, and now you can see it's now connected to that table occurrence that we just created. We can now show the data that's in this database without having a connection to a table occurrence. Your layouts don't do anything. Your layouts have almost no value. To put it another way, as you move around using scripts to move from layout to layout, you are in effect hopping from table occurrence to table occurrence to table occurrence, or at least could be if you had layouts based on these different table occurrences. If we're going from our quote area to our company area, we're jumping from table occurrence to table occurrence. Well, this suggests something very interesting. First of all, this is the beginning of understanding what context means. Context means what layout are you sitting on right now? What record are you sitting on within that layout? And what related records can you see? So let me put it to you a different way. When you're on a layout in FileMaker, it's like you are sitting on top of a mountain. And the question is, what can I see from this vantage point? So if I go into layout mode here, let's look at what mountain I'm sitting on right now. I'm going into my layout setup, and I'm seeing that I'm looking at the QOT for quote table occurrence. So when I open up my relationship graph, there it is. There's the QOT table occurrence. This is the mountain I'm sitting on. What can I see from this vantage point? Well, I can see all of this. In this case, I didn't get a chance to really show you the database that closely, but this is just a beefed up version of the quote database we were just looking at. And what I can see from this vantage point are the related quote line items. I can see my related company, related contacts, etc. All from that vantage point. So when FileMaker says that it is going to evaluate a calculation based on context, that means based on what table occurrence you're on, in other words, what layout you're on, what table occurrence you're on, and what table that table occurrence is connected to, that's your context, which gets determined at runtime. What's runtime? Well, that's referring to the script running. When the script is running and you're traversing the different layouts, you're traversing the different table occurrences, you are changing context as you move across your database. Any questions about this? Yes?
So would you say that context is the ability of what you can see from that position?
Yes, context is what you can see from where you are. Yeah. Now, we're officially out of time, but I'm going to give you 3 more minutes, and just show you something really quickly. When you are constructing your relationship graph in FileMaker, it's very easy to have it go off the rails and get crazy quickly. And I'm going to just show you quickly a couple of examples. Oh, sorry, it's in my slides. Just going to show you a couple of examples. Different types of relationship graphs that are all really hard to work with and that you could easily end up with. This relationship graph, if you've ever converted, if you're working in a really old database that was around before FileMaker 7 came out, when it got converted to FileMaker 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or whatever it might have been, this is what the relationship graph looks like. This is very difficult to work with. Everything is ultimately connected to everything else through that one table occurrence. Here's another relationship graph where everything is connected to everything else. Makes it very hard to work in. Here's a nightmare relationship graph. This is for real, and this is, I actually have one that's worse, but it's harder to get at a glance. Anyway, this is craziness. You cannot work in this, but you could easily end up with this if you aren't being judicious about adding table occurrences to your relationship graph. So what we can do is what we've done in the demo version. This is on the website. You can grab this database and you can take a look at it. I'm going to show you something really quickly. Notice that we've got three main organizational areas in this database: quotes, companies, and products. For each of these three areas, we've constructed 1, 2, 3, something called table occurrence groups. Table occurrence groups are a set of relationships that just serve that one particular area. If you segment your relationship graph when you're creating them and come up with functional groups that work together and don't connect all your relationships to each other, you will be far further ahead and your relationship graph will scale. Let me just show you an example. This graph can grow and grow. We can add new functional areas, and all we're adding is new table occurrence groups. We're not connecting everything to everything else and creating a mess. Here's an example of, this is an actual client database. It's not the worst, but it actually, when we employed the use of table occurrence groups, turned out that it boiled down to this. So from 48 table occurrences to 8 table occurrences, because we were very judicious in adding these table occurrences and thinking about how they're going to be used. And the difference between this and this is thousands and thousands of dollars. Whether you're an in-house person and people are looking at how productive you are, or you're an external person and you want to serve your clients properly, you want to have as clean a relationship graph as you can. It will absolutely run faster because you don't have as many dependencies. FileMaker has something called a dependency tree, and everything that's connected in your relationship graph leads to FileMaker having to resolve different dependencies, like perform calculations, send you caches for the different sets of relationships, those sorts of things. If you segment your relationship graph, you cut down on the overall number of dependencies as you're moving around. Any other questions, comments, criticisms, anything that you want to throw in at the last second? Yep. I want to say thank you so much for coming. Please fill out the evaluation if you've got the FileMaker to Go database. Thank you. Thank you.